Well, Mr. Bartlett, what do you say we get ready to get started?
Let's launch.
Start with just introduce yourself, Mr. Bartlett, briefly, and then I'll do the same.
Yeah. Yeah. For those of you that I have not met, my name is Blaine Bartlett. And, just a real quick little bit of background. The focus of this and the topic that we're addressing here is on leadership. And I have been working in the domain of leadership development for 40 years, hence the gray hair and the gray beard. I've learned a couple of things about what works from a leadership perspective, particularly when we're looking at the development of leadership within an organization or within life. So that's what we're going to be talking about here. I've worked all over the world. I've actually had about 300,000 people in my programs. I've touched in that context and within that time frame of 40 years, about 1 million people with this information in some way, shape, or form. So that's kind of what I'm bringing to this. And we're going to be talking about a model that we've developed that I think has some pretty good legs to it. So that's who I am, and my partner in crime here, Doland White. Doland, why don't you give them 8 bars on you?
Yeah, there you go. I grab my keyboard here real quick, or my harmonica. So I'm Doland White, and it's a pleasure to be here with everybody today. Similar to Blaine, I come with a little more than 30 years experience in leading organizations. I've been blessed to have an opportunity to, again, travel all over the world, lead organizations both on a global basis, and in doing so, as a leader, have learned some things through the school of hard knocks, and some things through good behavior, and some things through misbehavior. So this is an opportunity today to share some of those insights with you, and particularly with the model that we're going to present to you. So it's a good chance. Our intent is to be conversational. There will be PowerPoint slides. I don't want anybody to be disappointed, so we will have some PowerPoint slides here shortly. But while that's going on, we'll have an opportunity just to share insights and why these 5 principles matter, and hopefully send you away with some things that you can go back to the teams that you lead, or teams you participate in, or businesses that you may own or guide, and apply some of these things instantly. And of course, this will be available to you too, so you can come back and watch it another time. So Mr. Bartlett, do you want to share your screen? And
yep. Let me move over here. Okay, and Zoom wants to update something, so let me move out of that.
Well,
really not now.
I'm glad you're doing the moving. I'm not doing a lot of moving today. I was, for the sake of conversation, blessed with throwing my back out last night. So
here we go.
If I seem rigid and stiff, it is because I am.
Okay, so we've got a promise that we were making to you here, and I'm assuming everybody can see the screen. So the promise is actually quite simple. It's 2 parts. Number 1, you're going to learn why traditional leadership development approaches don't work. And both Doland and I are pretty adamant about that. I've been in this, like I mentioned, in this field for a lot of years, and I've seen a lot of programs come around. I worked with some organizations that are some of the largest in the world, literally, hundreds of thousands of employees. And I've been party to developing and implementing and actually facilitating some leadership programs that at the end of the day were like putting a Band-Aid on. And that's not where we want to go right now. And we're going to talk about why that's so here in just a minute. We're also going to be presenting in a way here that gives you some tools, leadership tools that are specifically designed to have impact on your leadership effectiveness and the results that you're producing. So the promise here is you're going to understand why a traditional approach doesn't work, and here are some tools that do work. And hopefully in the context of what we'll be presenting here, you'll get a sense of how you can quickly begin to integrate these into the way that you lead yourself, your life, your people, and your organization. That's essentially what we're looking to do here. So with that as a preamble, let me just jump into just kind of a high-level overview of a couple of things here. First of all, just organizational leadership. some data. This is from Gallup, and I've actually cited this from a 2016 study that Gallup did, but they do this every year. And this number has not changed in about 25 years that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
It's moved 2 or 3 percentage points, but essentially what Gallup's data shows, and this is globally, this is a global study that's done, 87% of the global workforce is disengaged, emotionally disengaged from the work that they're doing in some way, shape, or form, either passively disengaged or in some cases actively sabotaging disengaged. Now, where this gets to be interesting when we put it in the framing of leadership is McKinsey. Again, I'm using 2016 here as kind of a baseline study date. McKinsey asked leaders around the world, how do you think you're doing as a leader? And 86% of leaders rated themselves as both inspiring and as good role models. Now, that bumps up against 87% of the global workforce being disengaged. And so that begs an interesting question, what's going on here? Well, what's going on is real simple. Going back to Gallup again, 2016, 82% of employees see their leaders as fundamentally uninspiring. So there is a big gap here between self-perception and the perception of those that are following us. So how does that gap get closed, and what do we want to be paying attention to? Because what's really interesting is that 87%, I've mentioned, it has not moved in about 25 years. Companies are not ignorant. They know about this. Management isn't ignorant. They know about this. They know the cost that disengaged employees actually represent to an employee or to a company's work and the production, and the productivity that they're looking to achieve. So much so that on an annual basis, companies spend $46 billion to turn that 87% number around. And specifically, they spend $46 billion annually on leadership development programs that in 25 years have borne absolutely no fruit. It's crazy. It's crazy. So this is why we say, the traditional leadership approaches don't work. And there's, I can cite a number of different studies around this, but, very simply, you don't learn leadership in a classroom environment. You don't learn it. You learn about it. You'll learn about leadership. You'll learn about what's necessary. You'll learn about what you can pay attention to. You'll learn about what skills you might want to develop, but you won't learn leadership in a classroom situation. And we'll talk a little bit about this when we come into the Q&A. Both Doland and I have had experience with what does work when you couple a classroom environment with something else. And we're going to actually explore that a little bit here. But that $46 billion, that buys a whole lot of lattes.
It does. A lot of lattes there. Well, it's always interesting to me when we look at that number and talk about the number, and then in particularly the statistics from the previous slide, how that expense, that $46 billion, which fundamentally has gone up because the numbers have remained consistent, which means that we're spending more today than we were in 2016.
Yeah.
That's a huge investment, or circuitous investment. I never get to use that word, so I'll use it today, circuitous. That's a huge circuitous investment for little or no result.
Little to no result, little to no return. Yeah, it's really interesting in regard. So what do we want to do here? Well, again, this is just kind of the opening salvo in a deeper dive that we want to do with you guys. First of all, I want to define what a leader is. And this definition is agnostic. And what I mean by that is it strips away behavioral characteristics. It strips away the what would I say here? The peculiarities that George Patton might have compared to Mother Teresa. Both of them were effective leaders, but certainly from a characteristic standpoint, from a character standpoint, from just the way that they did what they did, very different, very different. But what all leaders, and I mean this very literally, what all leaders have in common is that they cause movement. They cause movement. They cause something to be different. Now, where this gets to be particularly useful in our thinking is everybody causes movement in some way, shape, or form when they step into their work environment, when they come home at the end of the day, when they go to church, when wherever you go, you are causing movement. You are causing movement. The system that you enter, the environment you enter, has to adjust in some way to accommodate your presence. So what this invites is a way to poke holes in the notion of are leaders made or born. No, leaders just are. Every one of us is causing movement all the time. The question I want us to look at, and that's kind of the focus of what we're looking at with this webinar, is are you effective? And what I mean by that is, are you getting the kind of movement that you need to get the result that you say you want? And that's really a different question than, am I a leader? Are you a leader? Are they a leader? Yeah, the answer to that question is yes. Are they effective? Well, that's a different question.
Yeah.
That's a question of co-creating coordinated movement. Are you getting the kind of movement that is causing actions that are necessary to get the results that you say you want? That's a dynamic that is actually teachable. That's where skill development comes in. That's where a lot of other things, and this is actually where a lot of focus on traditional leadership development actually is organized. We're specifically defining leadership in this way: co-creating coordinated movement. It's two pieces: co-creation. There's an ownership transfer that occurs. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then the coordinated movement. How do you do the dance? What skills are necessary there? What do people need to know in order to do that coordination well so that you don't have unintended consequences? Big enough stick, big enough pot of money, I can get anybody to do anything short term. But then I got to go back and clean up after myself. So I want unintended consequences to be minimized. I mean, truly minimized. Co-creating coordinated movement. That's what we're after. That's where we're heading.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. I once was in a meeting with a gentleman named Paul Orfallo. Paul was the owner of Kinko's. He was Kinko.
Yeah, Paul Orfallo, yes.
And in the meeting with Paul, we were sitting across the table and we were discussing a challenge that we're facing. And he looked me in the eye and his quote was, "I don't care. I can throw enough money at it and make it go away."
Mm-hmm.
So but very interesting approach.
Away.
Yeah, go away.
Yeah, and that's the illusion. We think it goes away, but it will pop back up again. You know, names and faces have been changed to protect the innocent. But yeah, if I haven't addressed the root, something is always going to reappear. Yeah. I mean, I do this in my garden. If I can't get the root out, I've got to go back and cut the top off again. That damn dandelion. Sort of a thing.
True.
Yeah, it's true. So we're looking here, and one of the ways that we look at co-creating coordinated movement. Are you doing it well? It has to do with a term in software coding that is bandied around a little bit, and it's called elegance. Is this elegant code? Elegant code is code that is written in a way that produces exactly what it's intended to produce with no bugs. I don't have to go back and clean up after myself.
Right.
Leadership has the same dynamic to it. Elegant leadership causes minimally unintended consequences. I don't have to. Cleaning up after myself is horrendously expensive. And we're going to be looking at this in just a minute here when we start looking at one of the major components of this model, which has to do with the nature of trust. So this is the overview here. What we're looking at, and this is what this book was written for, the Leadership Mindset Weekly. We're going to be referencing this a couple of different times. One of the ways, and this is 52 practices to shift a mindset. I'm going to talk specifically here about mindset. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to start with the definition of leader, because part of the mindset is that you need to be in a role or a position to be the leader in an organization. That's a mindset that has gotten us into a lot of trouble, because we reserve a lot of developmental dollars for people that are in role or in position. Everybody's a leader. Not everybody's effective. And if you've got effective leaders throughout your organizations, you're going to be pretty successful. If you've got people saying, well, I'm not a leader, all bets are off, coordinated movement, co-creating, that's not what I'm about. You're going to be getting disengagement. Yeah, you're going to have 87% of your people disengaged because they don't think they're leaders that are co-creating with you in a coordinated way the results that you say you want. That's where we're heading. So as we unfold this webinar and the content here, this is what we're paying attention to. Leadership, the co-creation of coordinated movement, has 5 components to it, 5 basic domains that we pay attention to. Awareness, and we're going to talk about each one of these in just a minute here. Awareness, context, communication, commitment, and trust. At the end of the day, when you're looking at co-creating coordinated movement, these are the 5 elements that you pay attention to. No more, no less. All of them are crucial. All of them are crucial. And they're laid out in this way, not because there's a linear component to it, not because there's a hierarchical build, but just for the sake of making some sense out of it. This is a model. They all kind of overlap onto each other in some way, shape, or form. But to make them discrete so that you can understand what it is that you're looking at, that you can understand where you need to leverage more effectively, that's why we've laid this out in this way. And I'll talk a little bit as we get into this about the breakdowns in each one of these silos, because there's a way that actually makes some sense in the way that we've actually put it together. So let's just start with awareness. From a leadership perspective, awareness is your superpower. There's a law in the study of systems dynamics. It's called the law of requisite variety. And the law of requisite variety says that the element in a system that has the most choices available to it will be the dominant element in the system. As a leader, you want to have more choices than the system has when it pushes back against you when you start to change things, because the system will push back. And if you don't have more choices available for responding to that pushback, you're going to be dead in the water. So awareness, this is the power of awareness. Awareness creates choice. The greater awareness that I have, the more choices I recognize as being visible about how I respond, about directional moves, that sort of a thing. So awareness is the superpower of a highly effective leader. And I want to illustrate that in a couple of ways here. First of all, it's about noticing, and that's essentially what awareness is. It's about noticing, just noticing where my attention is going, noticing what I'm noticing. That's kind of a nice little trip of phrase, but when you start noticing what you're noticing, it invites you to pay attention in a different way. Because for most of us, we've got not a clue where our attention is going. And why this is important is because energy follows attention, not intention. Your energy, your creativity, your behavior is organized around what you're paying attention to. And attention actually is drawn to things that you find to be meaningful in some way, shape, or form. We'll talk about that in just a minute as well. But this awareness piece is absolutely crucial to effective leadership. This poem is something I use all the time to illustrate this. The range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. Now think about that for just a minute. The range of what we think and do is limited by what we fail to notice. You've all heard the phrase, get out of the box, think outside the box. Well, your box is what limits you. It's kind of what I'm noticing that I've got this box around me. I don't see anything outside of it. The range of what I think and do is limited by what I fail to notice. Because I fail to notice that I'm failing to notice, there's little that I can do to change. And this is where awareness comes into play. Until I can become aware that I'm not paying attention, until I can become aware that I didn't notice, there's literally nothing that I can do except having an accidental epiphany to change. So until we notice how failing to notice shapes our thoughts and deeds. So noticing is really, 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 let me say that one more time, really important. Awareness is your superpower as a leader. And that's why when we start looking at where leaders pay attention, things kind of go off the rail if you're not really noticing effectively. Most leadership development programs, most leadership development processes organize around three fundamental skill sets. Let's develop a vision, which is the answer to the question, and Simon Sinek talks about this a lot, the
Yeah.
question why. Why are we doing what we're doing? It's kind of a directional question. And leaders cause movement into what direction? Well, that's what the vision is designed to produce. Strategy. When you start getting into senior ranks in an organization, strategy development becomes really important. What's the best pathway? And that's another way to think about strategy. What's the best pathway to realize that vision in the most effective manner possible? And that's, what course of action do we need to take? What pathway are we going to organize around? And then the tactical piece. And this is where management starts to come into play. You start looking at the how do we do this? And this is the executables.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think there's a key point in that when we get to the how and the tactics. One of the things that changed was there was a different word that you said at that point, which was not leadership, it was management. Management's a very different thing than leading. So I'm curious about how many people, this is what people walk into when you walk into a leadership course: vision, strategy, and tactics. That's the pyramid that we've been taught. Sat in the rooms many times myself. Curious, just by in the chat, just throw a hands up or drop a yeah, got it, been there, done that. If that's something that you've done in your past before, because we're gonna change gears a little bit and talk about a different approach.
Yeah. And that's exactly, to that point. There's two blank areas here that you notice. This is what gets filled in when we start looking at, and this is what we want you to take away. This is where you start going, didn't know that before. Here's something I can play with. Awareness. Awareness is what we use to discover the mindset that's in play. And another word for mindset here I'm going to use is paradigm. But what's the mindset that is informing what it is that I'm paying attention to? What's the mindset that is informing what I think I can or can't do? Those sorts of questions start to come into play here. And the level down below this is something that we call the spirit. And the book that I showed up a little bit ago, it's called, The Soul of Business. It's a part of a series that we're working with here. But these two areas, these two areas here, mindset and spirit. When you start looking at addressing that 87% of employee disengagement, this is where your leverage is. This is where you actually can make a difference. Increased awareness. What are people paying attention to? Because behavior is consistent with attention. Behavior is the ways that people organize what they do relative to what they think is important in their environment. And aliveness is where we start getting emotionally engaged in what we're doing, co-creating what we're doing, co-creating, and getting creative about how we coordinate with each other. So the rest of this webinar is going to be looking at these two areas in particular. And awareness is the gateway. Awareness is our gateway. So what's a mindset? Well, a mindset is real simple. It's a mental program that has almost exclusive control over our habitual behaviors. And I want to underline and underscore that word, habitual behaviors, because almost all of our behavior is habitual. As a matter of fact, share this study with you.
Yeah.
When it comes to results in consciousness, 5% of our behavior is consciously self-regulated. 5% of our behavior, 5% is consciously self-regulated. By implication and inference, you can say that, well, behavior is largely a function of habit and routine, and that 95% is out of sight, out of mind, it's habituated, it's unconscious, it's automatic. This is the area that comprises our mindset. And this is where we move from what is intentional, which is conscious and self-regulated, to what becomes habitual, which is what we're actually paying attention to. And paying attention doesn't necessarily mean I'm aware of it. It's this automatic, it's just kicked into gear here. What is the body paying attention to? What is the mindset paying attention to that is taking the energy and translating it into behavior that produces the results I am getting, which may not be, and likely are not, the results I say I want. So your mindset is a couple of things here, just a real simple way to think about this. When you woke up this morning, I want every one of you to think about this. When you woke up this morning, there was a routine that got triggered. You probably got out of bed in the same side of the bed. You did the same bathroom routine, brushed your teeth with the same hand, using the same toothbrush, most likely, put the toothpaste on the brush in the same way, put the slippers on or whatever it was, wandered down to the kitchen, grabbed your favorite cup for your coffee or tea. All of this was, you didn't even have to think about it. Thinking the same thoughts, which actually, there's a comfort to that. Yeah, our thoughts, have a biochemical component to them, and it trips stuff up in our body. And I say trips up, I mean, there's these little circuits that get closed or open that begin to produce chemicals and endorphins and, serotonin and all kinds of stuff that create feelings. Oh, God, this is good. Yeah. Or, I woke up feeling anxious. I wake up feeling anxious every morning. I mean, those sorts of things come into play, or I wake up feeling, oh God, this is going to be a great day. It's habituated. It becomes habituated. And it signals the same genetic play out in our body. So what ends up happening is we start thinking in ways that generate feelings, and those feelings become habituated, and those feelings then inform our thinking. So we think the way we feel, we start feeling the way we think, and we're off to the races. We think the way we feel the way we think, we feel the way we think, we feel the way we think, and all of a sudden, we're not thinking. We're just feeling our way through our day. And this is our mindset. Our thoughts and the intensity of these thoughts directly influence our health, our choices, and our quality of life. If we want to improve the results that we have in life, we have to change entire patterns of thinking. New patterns change our mindsets. New patterns change our mindsets. So what we're looking to do here is finding ways to think differently. And that's what this type of leadership development, this type of approach to leadership actually requires of people in the organization, not just the top leaders, but everybody in the organization. Yeah, I was doing some work with a firm in Australia, spent a couple of years working with them. And right at the outset, when I was talking to them, and it was a manufacturing firm, talking to the top leaders in the company, and I said, well, we need to get your workforce involved. And they're going, well, it's a blue collar workforce. These guys just wait around to be told what to do. They're just here to pick up their paychecks. And innovation, you're not going to get innovation from these guys. Yeah, the mindset was so pervasive, and it took a couple of years. Where they're at right now is they are one of the most innovative, one of the most creative, and one of the most engaged manufacturing firms in Australia today. They are just knocking it out of the park because everybody in the organization started thinking differently about what they were doing. Who am I? Where do I belong? Those questions started to come into play. We addressed leadership from a different perspective, which goes to this next slide. Context is where meaning gets generated. What's meaningful? Behavior is organized around meaning. People behave in ways that are consistent with the meaning that they are making up about what's going on around them. And context matters. Everybody brings a context, brings a meaning to what it is that they've been asked to do. And if you're not paying attention to that as a leader, you got an interesting dynamic going on, because you got somebody saying, no, it's this. And boy, this is pointy. I don't know if I want to approach that. And somebody else is going, pointy, what the heck are you talking about? It's pretty, got a lot of smooth surfaces here. No, it's awfully big. Well, no, it's not really big. It's got a big trunk. Big. So all of this is meaning, and people organize their behavior around meaning. So the leader's role is to be able to define appropriate meaning for people that they can coordinate around. How does that get done? We spend actually almost 3 months or 2 months working with that when we start looking at this from a leadership perspective.
Yeah.
Communication, and I'm going to start moving up a little bit here. Co-creating coordinated movement. It's a distinction between wrestling and dancing. co-creating coordinated movement. Now, you may have to wrestle somebody for a while before you can get to the point where you're dancing with them. But the point around communication is rooted in this. Everything has a relationship component to it. That's all an organization is. It's just people that are in relationship with each other, obviously, but they're also in relationship with vision, values. They're in relationship with processes and procedures. And when you start communicating about meaning in particular, people have preferences. And how you get to common ground so that you can actually dance is a challenge, and it requires mastery.
It's interesting you point that out. When we talked about this earlier a couple of times, and when the way we approach it and talk about wrestling and dancing, being an ex-state champion wrestler dude, my goal in wrestling was never to dance. My goal in wrestling was to pin you, put you into the position that I want you to be in, and then hold you there until you succumb to my will, which was quit fighting.
But I win.
Exactly.
And this is a mindset. Many leaders have the mindset that dominance is where I'm supposed to be coming from, in my way or the highway. And that is antithetical to co-creating coordinated movement. Now, you're going to get disengagement because people all of a sudden don't feel as if they have autonomy. Right. They don't feel as if they have agency. And you got a problem. And that's not to say where you want to go and where you want to have people move to as a leader isn't important, but how you get them there is important. And you're not probably going to get them there by pinning their ears to the mat.
No, generally no. Generally not.
So how do you do this? And most of us learn to communicate accidentally, and then we never got beyond that. Leaders need to learn how to communicate masterfully. And communication is very interesting. Most leaders that I've worked with over 40 years think if I can just create the business case and enunciate and articulate the business case well. Here's why we're doing this. Here's the numbers that justify it. Here's everything that you need to know so that you understand exactly why I'm asking you to do what you're doing. People go, yeah, right. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because it feels off. Communication with human beings is a biological process, not a logical process. And this is what leaders that are highly effective understand. This is where emotional intelligence comes in.
Yeah.
This is where you start paying attention. You start noticing, where am I off? Where is the mark not being hit?
Yeah, and I think this is in particular, one of the nuggets I would tell everybody about on the call with us today is, this is a really important topic to pay attention to. The communication with other humans is not logical. This is not logical. What you think is logical as an outcome isn't the truth. It is biological. And in particularly today, where we yet remain in an environment of stress and uncertainty, economically and culturally and physically and health-wise, there's still a lot going on. So communication is even more imperative that you think about communicating today and remember the biological imperative. It's extremely important for your success as a leader.
And I think that's a really important point, because most people will conflate communication with talking.
Yes.
And they are not the same thing.
No.
We will use words to convince. We need to look at a different way of doing this. And this is why we talk about context. Context is about meaning, generating meaning. And Virginia Satir, who was a psychologist, family therapist, had one of the best definitions of communications I've ever seen. It's simply the ways, plural, ways people use to work out common meaning with one another. And as soon as we've got common meaning worked out, where we're on the same page, then it's a question of how do we dance? Then it's a question of who's going to play what part in this. But until we can get on the same page, which is what meaning produces, you've got a discordant jazz ensemble out there that isn't working particularly well.
Yes.
So how we go about doing this is absolutely crucial. And in the leadership domain, this is one area that we spend a lot of time developmentally, because awareness, again, I'm going to go back to this as a superpower. You start paying attention to what's working, you start noticing things in a different way. You find ways to interrupt the pattern because, again, this is all habituated behavior. We have learned how to communicate with people, and that's just kind of our default. We just kind of go to it. And I'd like each of you right now to just kind of think of, who's a difficult person that you work with, a difficult person that you have to have working with you to get something done. If you find them difficult, you've probably got a habituated pattern in play there. The minute you start to think about them, feelings come up. How I think determines how I feel. How I feel determines how I think. There's this loop, that just kind of comes into play. Problem, that's a problem. So we want to find ways to interrupt the pattern. And this little kind of throwaway I think is useful here. My employer is paying for the surgery. I'm having a speed bump installed between my brain and my mouth. Yeah, just because it's in your head doesn't it doesn't need to come out of your mouth. And you interrupt the pattern, and it's the pause that allows for responsiveness as opposed to reactivity. And what you're looking for as a leader is being able to respond. Responsible means response able. Response able. I want to be able to respond here in a thoughtful, mindful, intelligent way. Co-creating coordinated movement. That's what we're looking for.
It's a 3-second gap.
A 3-second gap. So that moves us into this area of ownership. It's your idea. You're the leader. You've got an idea of where this ship needs to go. What's the port that you're looking to land in? You've got to get the crew on board with you, though. And this is where ownership transfer comes in. And this is really what I'm talking about with commitment. And Doland and I both have got a lot of experience in working with leaders where this has not happened. The idea remained in their mind, the most important thing in the world, but nobody else got it.
Yeah.
And what's that bridge? Ownership transfer has to occur here. And there's two dynamics in play. One has to do with understanding that reality is defined in your mind. Reality is defined in the mind of the leader. And this is why noticing becomes really important. Awareness becomes really important. You may have, if you report to a board, this challenge that has been presented to you, this KPI that has been dropped in your lap. And it's now become, your holy grail. But if your mindset is organized in such a way that it is not landing, it's not actually getting integrated into your beingness, there is a disconnect. There's signal loss, I guess would be one way to talk about it. People see you talking about something, but they experience you doing something different. There's a discord. Reality is defined in the mind of the leader. You have to internalize this in an incredibly powerful way. And Steve Jobs here, I think, was probably the master at doing this, at least, metaphorically. The idea of the reality distortion field. And without going into a lot of story on this, the net of it is, when you were around Steve, and he was really going on about something, even though coming into the conversation, you thought it was the craziest idea in the world, he so embodied it. It lived in him. And you would walk away from that interaction going, I don't know what just happened, but I believe that this is possible. And leadership is the art of moving possibility into reality. That's what it is. It's the art of moving possibility into reality. Your reality distortion field is really how possibility gets landed in the minds of others so that it can then migrate into reality. That's one way that we look at this from a commitment perspective. Your mindset determines the ceiling on where and how you, your people, and your organization ends up growing. Where does it grow into? What does it move into? And this, I've actually, labeled this next piece as Bartlett's first law of leadership. People will give you only what they perceive you are willing to settle for. They will never give you what you ask for. You will get what people perceive you are willing to settle for. And this is why this has to be in you, so that the settling is only that which you say is important. Your moods, your actions, your language, everything about you has to be in concert with, it has to be congruent with that outcome. That's what commitment is about. I am a commitment, not I am committed to, but I am that commitment. That's the distinction that we work with here.
That's interesting. Before we go off of that topic, where you will only get what others perceive, you're willing to settle for. The practical kind of component that we've spoken of before is we've all been, and probably everybody that's attending or listening, we've all been in meetings where something has been presented by a leader or manager, to be probably more along that line rather than use the word leader, around a concept of things that we all need to go. And everybody shakes their head yes, and then the meeting ends and everybody walks out to the hall. And generally that individual is 10 steps in front of everybody else, and there's mumbling and grumbling going on at the back of the room. And the sentence is, "This too shall pass." So I'm just going to go sit back in my cubicle and just put my head down and do what I do.
Yeah. He or she isn't serious. They went to charm school. They learned something new. This will pass. It'll wear off. Don't worry about it.
New words.
Commitment is integration. Commitment is ownership transference. That's the two dynamics that comes into play here. Integration and ownership transference. In order to make this happen, there is a foundation that needs to be built. And in the absence of that foundation, you're going to run into a lot of obstacles. And what's interesting is that they can become stumbling blocks pretty quickly. This is a picture, and then I'll just use this as a kind of an example. This was shot from a gondola. We were in Croatia, and this is a place that we were heading. Now, when you look at this picture, the first thing that you want to do is get a squeegee out. All I see are the raindrops in the way. Where we're heading is here. This is the destination. This has to be crystal clear so that this doesn't get in your way. If this is not crystal clear in your mind, in your mindset, in your behavior, this will get in the way. And then you're going to have some difficulties. Because people will say, well, you're not paying attention. You're buying into how dusty it is or how blurry it is.
Right.
So that moves us into this area of trust. And this is the last piece that is standing in terms of the leadership profile that we're working with. Most organizations are built on a house of cards when it comes to trust. Every organization in 40 plus years that I've worked, every organization in some way, shape, or form, when I start doing a deep dive and start asking people what's going on, well, we've got trust issues here. And it, oftentimes it's global, but very specifically it gets, well, John and Mary don't trust each other. There's trust issues pandemically running on around us. It's a house of cards. And if trust is not in place, this is foundational to effective working. And I mentioned that everything's a relationship. Relationships are built on trust, including their relationship with you, including their relationship with what you say you want to have happen. So what is trust? This gets to be interesting when we open this door up, when we start asking, okay, what you say there's trust issues. What are you really talking about? As far as we can tell, there's about 6 different buckets that come into play here. Competency, consistency, courage, caring, composure, and character. I was in a conversation the other day with Stephen Covey Jr. And I said, yes, and I've known Stephen pretty well for a long time. I said, when you break this down in an organization, when people are talking about trust, what are they really talking about? He said, fundamentally, it comes down to 2 things: competence and character. Competence and character. If these 2 pieces are missing, it's a house of cards. It is going to collapse. So when we start looking at leaders developing high levels of trust or developing the capacity to get what they want, co-creating coordinated movement, this becomes absolutely crucial. And this is directly from The Speed of Trust, a book that Stephen wrote. If you've got low trust in an organization, this is where you get emotional disengagement. This is where you get politics cropping up. People getting thrown under the bus. You've got bureaucracy. Well, we can't do that until we check it out. There's operating procedures here. All of that stuff comes into play. You got people churning over. There's a tax to this. This is expensive. Things slow down. It takes forever to get things done. On the other hand, if you've got high trust in a system, leaders can do amazing things. And I don't mean just a titular leader. I mean leaders throughout the body of the organization. They start taking initiative. And the values that they are creating, the added value starts to go up. There's improved collaboration, innovation, partnering, better execution, cycle times go down. I mean, just all kinds of things begin to happen here. And you become an employer of choice. People actually want to hang around. So you have to be able to pay attention to this. Now, here's the fly in the ointment with this. If you think the problem is out there, that very thought, that's a mindset. The problem's out there. If only they would. Nah, the problem is that thought itself. The problem isn't out there. You need to trust yourself to handle the consequences of being direct, open, and honest. And this is an element of self-mastery. You have to be in a position where you can say, I can handle this. May scare the bejesus out of you, but I can handle this.
Probably will.
Yeah. And with that kind of trust in place, you can move mountains. You can handle a lot of pushback. And trust is what makes the other four elements actually take root and grow. So these are the 5 domains that we look at. And what we want to do is introduce something to you right now that it's an invitation. We want you to look at how you can become more effective as a leader. And we've got a mastermind program that we put together that is not a typical mastermind. We've organized this in a way that is designed very specifically to address everybody in an organization, not just the titled leaders, not just the folks that are holding roles. You change the leadership mindset in an organization so that co-creating coordinated movement is the focus. You will have an unstoppable organization in so many ways. So first of all, just a mastermind. What we're looking at here is taking these 5 areas that we just did a high-level overview on and going into depth. Each of these areas represents a month. Back that up. Each of these areas represents a month's worth of work that you will be doing in that particular domain. Now, the way we've laid this out, they don't build on each other. And I want to, Doland and I both want to actually disabuse anybody of that thought. You can come into this at any point in time. This is an ongoing process. You can drop in on commitment. If we happen to be working with that particular area, we will spend 2 months working on commitment. You don't have to have done the 3 that look like they precede. They don't precede. They just happen to be in this sequence at this point in time because that's how we organized it. This is a year-long process. It's 52 weeks. In 52 weeks, you will touch on every single one of these domains, and you will do a deep dive in each one of these domains. At the end of the 52 weeks, your mindset as a leader will have shifted. That is a guarantee. It can't not shift. And it will shift in service of co-creating coordinated movement. That's what it will shift to. The benefits of a mastermind. The first gained popularity when Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich. And he highlighted Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie attributed all of his success in life to a mastermind, as did Thomas Edison, George Firestone. You just kind of go down the line. Everyone who's ever created great success has either consciously or unconsciously employed the mastermind principle. And Doland and I both have been parts of masterminds for years. Some of them, we've been part of, they cost over $100,000 a year to be a part of. And that's not what we're intending here. That is not in any way, shape, or form where we're going with this.
No.
What we want to be able to do is make this as accessible as possible with the intent of shifting what's going on here. Life changes that are easily accessible over time, working with peers that actually have your best interest at heart, those sorts of things. And this is the power of the mastermind. Group becomes the way that this gets done. An individual by themselves doesn't get much done. When you harness the power of the mastermind, you can actually move mountains. So this is where we're going. We've actually started the program. We've got about 50 people in this mastermind right now. And here's just some comments from a couple of different folks. And I believe Doug is on this webinar as well. So Doug, I want to just kind of shout out to you. Yeah, as an engineer, kind of very right brain. I'm a hard nut to crack. Yeah, according to what he's saying here, this is working pretty well. Todd works for a state agency, and weekly practices: thought-provoking, engaging, habit shifting. There's stuff here that you're going to all be able to access and work with. So I'm going to bring this to a close. We're going to open up the Q&A. We want you to be open to participating in this. And we'd like you to be able to look at ways that you can make this work for you. It's 52 weekly meetings. They're an hour long. It's an hour a week, 15 minutes a day. That's basically how you look at it. An hour a week, 15 minutes a day. Yeah, at the most. And the price on this is $197 a month. And you can cancel anytime. You start anytime. You can cancel anytime. $197 a month. And if you do the math, $197 a month is less than a grande latte or a venti latte. A venti latte.
Yes, right.
So yeah, this is affordable. This is so we wanted to take price out of the consideration here. The real question for you is value. Value. What needs to shift in your life? If you're not getting the kind of results that you want as quickly as you want in the way that you want, co-creating coordinated movement is the answer to it. How do you do that? This mastermind will actually give you the way to go there. So you can go to this URL, and we'll put this in the chat, learn.blainebartlett.com. And this landing page, and it is a landing page, has got a little brief video on there about the structure of the mastermind. There's some very specific details about what you can expect to produce in the program. And all you need to do is just click on the little link there that says enroll now, and you'll be taken to a sign up page, and you are automatically at that point in the program. So we've made it as simple as we can possibly make it, as painless as we can possibly make it. Your job is to make a decision. That's, leaders act. Leaders decide and act. So that's the invitation. So I'm going to stop the share here, and I think we'll just kind of go into a conversation and open it up to folks.
Great. So if you have any questions or comments, love to have them in the chat, or if there is I can open it up and allow you to unmute yourselves, but that could get to be a little unwieldy. But let's just stick to, if you have any questions or comments, add them into the chat. Travis, there's a comment from Travis, and great presentation. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Welcome. And with all sincerity, obviously we're talking about, participating with us in the mastermind. The intent is to ensure that you leave this conversation with things that you can think about, things that you can go execute on, things that may give you different perspectives as you look at being a leader. It's a lot to cover, as you can see by the number of things that are in the 5 domains that we covered. It's a lot to cover, and there's no way to do it in the body of and be respectful and do it in an hour. So,
yeah, the recording of this will be up, so you can go back and review it. Yeah, we will give you the link on that. Doland and I facilitate the weekly meetings on this mastermind, so you will have access to us on an ongoing basis over the course of that 52 weeks. So a great question here, Travis. Do you think that masterminds are limited by Zoom? Can great leaders create value virtually? My experience and my answer to that is yes. I've been doing this for decades, and in my executive coaching work, I've got a number of clients that I work with remotely, and we're hitting the mark. We haven't, the whole COVID thing has not slowed us down. And in some ways, it's actually been more effective because we don't have some of the other distractions that might be present. The key is that you have to come prepared. You have to come, tightly positioned to actually leverage this. So
Yeah.
I think it works great. I think it
Yeah.
works actually really, really well.
Yeah, and I can second that. So I'm actually working with two of my clients now that one where I'm fundamentally doing outsourced CEO services, another with helping them structure what their remote organization will look like, and then how to build that communication sequence, how to build trust in the team, both intra-trust with the organization and the team, and in trust between the leaderships, the members of the leadership and the team. And it's a very, very rapidly growing company that buys and sells radio stations, which is an interesting business all unto itself. But yeah, and it's in particular even more important now. Great question, Travis, and I'll kind of reinforce it with the fact that there are things that we are not going to come back to. What will become, I hate this phrase, the new normal. Yeah, which is way overused. It's like saying pivot. We can talk about that another day. But yes, nail my foot to the floor and I'll turn in circles. But as we approach the new normal and approach the things that we're doing, we are going to see a larger section, obviously, of the workforce that will not be returning to a brick and mortar office. They will not be coming back to a cubicle. They will not be sitting in a meeting room with you, which in turn is, I think, in a lot of cases, increase the velocity for companies. It's increased their ability to grow, increase their ability to find the right kinds of people. So, and that's what I'm at least experiencing with a couple of my clients. So, and really timely question, man.
Yeah, that answer I think is spot on because it dovetails directly into a question that Joyce has got here. Yeah, how is this applicable to working a home-based business?
Even more.
Couldn't be more relevant. Absolutely couldn't be more relevant. How do you co-create coordinated movement from a home-based business? That is where you need to really leverage what we're looking at with this. And this is a way to begin to think about that and actually take advantage of it. Co-creating coordinated movement is not for the faint of heart. But in a home-based business, you're going to have a lot of leverage. You truly are. How do you get people to come with you? How do you get them engaged? How do you participate fully with them? The value add piece is an interesting dynamic with that.
Sure. And it's even more interesting, just to kind of point out one aspect, just for you to consider, Joyce, is when you're thinking about your home-based business, indeed, and as a solopreneur, I like using that word a lot. Even though Blaine and I collaborate a lot, in some of our endeavors, we're both solopreneurs, which means our success is contingent upon leading other stakeholders who have control of their own businesses, their own teams, into and enlisting them into our vision, our goals, our strategy, and finding ways to collaborate. Many years ago, pre-gray hair, it used to be called co-opetition.
Yes.
So I would invite you to consider that, and particularly as if you're owning a home-based business, one of your challenges as a leader is, how do you do not only with internal in your own business, but how do you do that as with those that are your suppliers or your stakeholders or other individuals? It becomes really important to how you behave.
Yeah.
So, great question.
Great question. And I'm looking at our time. I want to be respectful of the hour that we've committed to this.
Yes.
This will be up. The Facebook Live version of this will be posted both on my Facebook page. Doland will have it posted on his. We'll be going also, I think we'll be able to get it onto YouTube and LinkedIn as well. But yeah, we will get you a link to this.
It'll be out there.
It will be out there, so you can review what we went over. And it was like I know it was like a fire hose, guys. There was a lot of stuff coming at you. These 5 elements, these 5 domains, they are absolutely crucial to effective leadership development, not traditional leadership development, effective leadership development, and that's what we're after here. Leaders are developed not in a classroom. I mentioned this right at the very beginning. They're not developed in a classroom. They're developed in situ. When you're actually in harness doing what you're doing. And it's the process of both repetition that repatterns the mindset and also self-reflection. And that is what the mastermind structure enables. It's both repetition, which is how mindset gets developed or redeveloped, and reflection. It's kind of, you toss it up against the wall and everybody kind of takes a look at it and says, have you thought about that? I hadn't seen that before. That reflection is really a crucial part of this.
Right.
So
two last questions.
Yep.
Mr. Henderson asks, where can we buy the book? You send me a check for $60 and I'll send you the book is available on Amazon. And if you search for the author Blaine Bartlett, 2 T's, you will find the book. So thank you for doing that, for asking that question. We didn't. It's
also
I missed my Kevin Harrington moment and should have promoted the book at the same time. But wait, there's more. So
wait, there's more. It's also available, or a link is available on blainebartlett.com. Yeah, just the simple URL. But Amazon is probably the easiest.
Welcome, Mr. Henderson. And then one last question. So the sessions are, but the just for everybody's information, the Leadership Mindset Mastermind is conducted every Monday. It's Monday morning. It's a 1-hour session, 10:30 Pacific to 11:30 Pacific. Generally within a couple of hours, those sessions are posted, made public. There's other things that happen from that, just so that you have an opportunity to know when they occur. So.
They're made public to the mastermind group.
That is correct.
The
Thank
members
you very much for that. Yes.
Yeah. And so the structure, and this is explained on the website, but the structure is, the group mastermind takes place Monday mornings, 10:30 a.m., as Doland was saying. But then over the course of that week, you are actually in a mastermind group.
With other individuals, yeah.
With other individuals, 3 to 4 other individuals that are very specifically looking at a practice for that week that is consistent with that particular domain that we happen to be exploring. So the mastermind, there's 2 pieces to it. One is the content piece, the deep dive, the exploration of that practice, and then the actual mastermind working group is structured. And this is what I talk about: an hour a week, 15 minutes a day. The 15 minutes a day is the practicing, the mastermind working that you do with your cohort, your mastermind cohort.
And it's really interesting. We've seen it's a community. It's about a little over 50 people in there already, and there's I think I've seen 2 things occur, other than we had a couple of comments up there from Todd and Doug, who are participants in the group. But one of the things is seeing people from all walks of life, many different places on the planet, Turkey and Japan and the United States and
South Africa.
Yeah, South Africa. And the concepts that they bring to the table and the challenges that they face, there's a maybe it's not a right word, universality to it. There you go. I almost got to use the word bifurcate. Universality. But, and they apply it, and then the velocity that comes out of it by working with other individuals who are trying to accomplish the same kind of goal. So the mastermind format has been extremely effective.
Yeah. So, folks, we want to thank you for participating. We look forward to having you in the mastermind if it's a fit for you. Once again, $197 a month. You can cancel at any time. If you drink Starbucks lattes, this isn't an either or. You can still have your latte, but you know what the price point is. It is not a bank breaker.
Awesome. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate the last comment. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon or evening, wherever you happen to be, or morning. It could be morning in some of these places. So take care.
Bless you.
Thank you.